Most would say it's a strong, dashing men who save the day at the end of the story. But are they really heroes? Yes, they may be strong and dashing, willing to risk their lives for others, to save the day in the end, but is that the meaning of true heroism? Heroes of Greek mythology are much more different than modern-day superheroes in cinema. Heroes are not classified how strong an individual is, or how charming someone is, or even how dedicated he is to fight against evil. It is about the mindset and the drive behind the actions of the person and the virtues that spread to others. A hero does not have to be such strong as Achilles or as witty as Odysseus to be a hero. It takes the ability to put yourself before others and to be a complete selfless human being for the good of others to be a true hero. Yes, strength and wit are helpful to heroes, but not necessary. Bravery and virtue come hand in hand and are equally as helpful as strength and wit. An example of a different type of hero is Antigone. Unlike Achilles and Odysseus, she is not the charming, strong warrior most heroes are depicted as, but she is someone who fought for justice, and justice is a cornerstone to a worthy hero. Without justice, a hero is just someone who is fighting for their desires. Sometimes justice can contradict itself, like in the case of Antigone. Creon set a just law that betrayers of the state must be humiliated and dishonored without burial, and Antigone must bring justice to the rules of Zeus, that all men must have a proper burial. Justice is for the greater good, even though it may not see the immediate value or the greatness of it, but eternally the truly justice is satisfied. Heroes armed with justice can be found in different types of people and in the different situations, all with the same drive for good. Heroes are found in the simplest of people and can even be born through the simplest of acts. It is the drive for good and the passion for justice. The first of the three heroes is Achilles of Homer's Iliad, giving the title of one of the most famous warriors of Greek mythology. Achilles is a great example of warrior type hero. He fights for what is good and his land in the fearless of battle, bringing justice to all that oppose him. In the Iliad, Achilles is approached by a multitude of difficult tasks. In the battles that test his strength and heart. Achilles is so well known by anyone who tries to oppose him or knows him that they will not survive against him, and that will not end well. In the Battle of Troy, Hector commands his men to set up camp outside of Troy, rest knowing that Achilles would rejoin the fight. Once the soldiers catch eye of Achilles approaching the camp, despite their strength in numbers, they flee, fearing the power of Achilles. Achilles cuts down every Trojan soldier in sight, leaving no one behind. Achilles is so driven by his rage that he has lost all thought of fear and overcomes the form of danger. He had killed so many soldiers that the god of the river, Xanthus, is even shocked by the carnage that Achilles has brought to Troy. As Achilles routes through Troy with a passive destruction behind him, he is only thinking of one thing, that was to cut down Hector in his tracks. Achilles uses the drive that he must kill Hector to drive and put him past limits of fear and danger to do anything to fulfill what he has set out to do. Achilles is a hero that defies the laws of fear and can put his own thoughts before him to finish his goal. Fate is the same for a man who holds back, the same for if he fights hard. We are all held in a single honor and brave when the weakness. A man dies still if he has done nothing, as one has done much. Eventually, Achilles meets with Hector and challenges him to a duel. Hector flees, and Achilles is chased throughout Troy 3 times before he is tricked by the goddess Athena to turn and fight Achilles. Achilles finally fulfills what he set out to do and brings justice to himself, and in his rage he kills Hector. Achilles straps Hector's body to a chariot and drags him throughout the city to further prove that he is triumphant when he sets himself to do a task, he finishes it. Though Achilles is blinded by his rage and the task of killing Hector, defiling his body, and still has a sense of rationality, the Trojans request that Achilles returns Hector's body to properly buried with the will of the gods. Achilles complies. Although Achilles is blinded by his rage, he defiles Hector's body by dragging it through the city and at Patroclus' funeral. He still complies with the justice of the laws of the gods, unless the Trojans have their leader's body properly buried. Still, we will let this be things of the past, though it hurts us. And beat down by constant anger rises inside us. Now I am making the end of my anger. It does not become of me. Unrelenting to rage on. On the topic of justice of burial, Antigone is one of a similar situation, where she wanted to fight for the right to bury her brother Polynices' body after Creon commands that he must not be done so because Polynices is a traitor. Yet Antigone fights not in the way Achilles did, with mass murder and strength, but the different way. She still fought for justice in her brother's burial. Both of these heroes fought for what was right and did not stop all justice, till justice was served, and in the end fulfilled the rules of the gods. Achilles may not seem as the usual hero for the destruction and the casualties of his battles, but the act of seeing good within the heat of rage is what brings the hero out of him. The ability to control oneself to the point of fulfilling justice is considered heroism. Antigone, the daughter of Oedipus, Sophocles' play of Antigone, known as the sister who stopped at nothing to bring justice to her family, is a great example of a true hero. Go, then, if you must, but remember, no matter how foolish your deeds, those who love you will love you still. The story of how Antigone fights for justice starts out with Polynices betraying his kingdom, wanting to be the ruler and fighting against his other brothers, Eteocles, and ends up dying to each other's hands. Eteocles gets a proper burial from Creon, the new king of Thebes, because he fought for the kingdom. Creon makes very clear that Polynices is a traitor and under any circumstances should not be buried. Antigone finds this to be unjust, and though Polynices betrayed the kingdom, he is still family and still should be promised by the gods a proper burial. Since both brothers have passed, Creon is next in line for the throne and is crowned king of Thebes, so the rules he makes are final and should be followed. Antigone thinks otherwise, because the laws of gods trump the laws of the state made by some mortal man. Antigone finds that this is just and is said to fulfill his justice, with the acceptance of any consequences that will come. Creon sends Polynices' body to be put in a courtyard for the stray dogs to feast and disrespect the traitor. Antigone thinks otherwise and sneaks into the courtyard to sprinkle dust over his body to act as a form of burial. Once Creon caught word of this vile act, was furious, and Antigone attempts to defy this law. Antigone would do anything to bring justice to her brother, even if it means death. Antigone sees Creon's choice of dishonoring Polynices as a pride, and though it is the just way to bury him, pride overcomes it and consumes all form of justice. All men make mistakes, but a good man yields when he knows his course is wrong and repairs the evil. The only crime is pride. This is similar to how Achilles treated Hector's body. Yes, Achilles dragged his body through the city to show disrespect and victory over Hector, but eventually he saw that justice is more important than victory and pride, so they let the Trojans bury Hector. Antigone's constant attempts to justify Polynices' burial has gotten her captured by Creon's men and taken him. Creon catching Antigone digging a grave by hand for Polynices, traps her in a cell that she may never break his laws again. Creon does not want to banish Antigone, though he acts as a thorn in the side of Thebes, as she's still more valuable to him than they were to marry his son, Haemon. Antigone and Haemon are put into a stone cell to keep Antigone from honoring Polynices' death, and at the same time they grow very fond of each other. Lovers, Antigone and Haemon decide that Polynices cannot live with this injustice, and Antigone hangs herself, to bring the end to the torment of being unable to fulfill Polynices' burial. Haemon, being in love, then Antigone stabs himself, laying dead side by side. Creon orders to open the cell and sees the horror that has taken place with them, and cries out in sorrow that his son has died, and regrets the actions that he has done. Creon's pride has gotten his son killed. Antigone stopped at nothing to bring justice to her brother and have him buried. And when it was impossible to do so, she killed herself to release herself from failure. Yet Antigone never actually fought in a battle. She's still considered a warrior and a hero, and fought in a different war, a war of justice and a war of her brother. Antigone is a just and worthy as Achilles in the pursuit of justice to fulfill the rules of the gods. Another example of a worthy hero is Odysseus of Homer's Odyssey. Known as a faithful and just man who uses his wit to return to his wife after years of being separated, Odysseus starts his journey to return back to his wife, trapped on the nymph Calypso's island. Where Calypso has fallen in love with Odysseus, Odysseus must overcome the charm of Calypso and return to his wife at home. Odysseus cannot guarantee that his wife is staying faithful, such as he is. Odysseus eventually escapes the island of Calypso to help Hermes and with the help of Hermes, and is faced with another hurdle that he ends at the island of the Cyclops, and is again captured. Odysseus and his men frantically think of a way to escape with the least number of casualties. Odysseus cared for his crew and would do whatever it takes to get them out alive. Odysseus, being the true hero, creates a plan to escape the Cyclops with their lives intact. He talks with the Cyclops and got him to drink an excessive amount of alcohol, making him drowsy and eventually falling asleep. Odysseus and his men cannot remove the stone covering the exit of the Cyclops cave, so must find a way to get the Cyclops to open it for them. Odysseus takes a burning stake from the fire of the cave and drives it into the sleeping Cyclops' one eye, blinding him forever. The Cyclops, screaming in panic, cannot find Odysseus again, creating the perfect diversion. Cyclops eventually has to lead the sheep out to the cave to let them graze on the grass outside. He lets them out one by one, filling them as they exit the door to ensure that Odysseus and his crew are not leaving the cave. Odysseus, being the witty man he is, orders the men to latch onto the bottoms of the sheep's bellies to escape the Cyclops' grasp. Cyclops, in the end, it has no weak man's companions, to whereby eat the violence of the force of your hollow cave. Your evil deeds were to catch up with you and be too strong for you. Hard one, who dared you to eat your own guests in your own house, so Zeus and the rest of the gods have punished you. Odysseus has done the impossible by escaping the clutches of the giant deadly Cyclops, to return faithfully to home to his wife. He once again is met with another hurdle. The god Poseidon knew that Odysseus has blinded his son Cyclops, and has sent the storm off to blow Odysseus off course, and shipwreck his island of Phaesera. It sets him back further into returning to his wife. The people of the island are hospitable and help him return to his travels. Once again, Odysseus is faced with another difficulty and setback on his journey home. A storm brought by Athena takes on him to another island known as the Lotus Eaters. Once on the island, Odysseus and his crew are faced with the lotus blossom, the wonderfully delicious food that will fulfill a man's stomach, but the consequence of eating the fruit removes all memory of ambition. Odysseus must not stop himself from eating this wonderful food, and must stop his crew from eating of it as well, as it can hinder his return back to his wife. Odysseus escapes the island of the Lotus Eaters and continues his journey home. Odysseus eventually finished with his journey and can return back home. After all that time away from his wife, all the struggles and hurdles, Odysseus had finally come home to fulfill what he had set out years ago. Odysseus' difficulties were almost over. He had finally fought off the suitors who wished to marry his wife Penelope and finally reunited with her. You dogs, you never thought I would any more come back from the land of Troy, because that of what you despoiled my household. You forcibly took my serving woman to sleep beside you, and shouldn't win my wife while I was still alive. Dedication and the will to never give up were given to someone's urges and the important traits to have in a hero, and Odysseus shows to be strong in dedication and self-control when among difficult tasks. Odysseus never gave up, even after being met with hurdles, setbacks, he painfully got through each and was rewarded with the love of his wife. Heroes are much more than that, than just strong fighters and noble people. They are dedicated to do what is good, and the will to stop at nothing to bring justice to what is good. Heroes of all kinds must have the ability to follow through and to never fall back on the task at hand, and will stop at nothing to fulfill goodness. Strength does not define a hero, nor does stature or importance. A hero is found in someone who fights for what is right, and whether it's a physical battle or a non-physical battle. The three heroes mentioned, Achilles, Antigone, Odysseus, are all heroes of their own kind, but in different ways. Achilles is a fighter that overcame fear and was triumphant in his foes in battle, and let nothing get in his way, which gave him the victory in the end. Although Achilles was enraged and was careless in some actions, he still had the time to let self-control and reason. Without reason, a fight is not worth the battle, and if it would be meaningless death. Achilles found that it was reasonable to return the body of Hector to his men and gave him the burial and the will of the gods, and in doing so gained the honor and respect from others in the way that all other actions could not have. Achilles is an unstoppable fighter and fearless in combat, but also is humble for what is right for the gods. Fate, and the same for the man who holds back, the same if he fights hard. We all held in the single honor and brave in weakness. Man dies still if he has done nothing, as one has done much. Achilles has a similar attitude to Odysseus in the way that he never gave up and was willing to die for what they fought for. Odysseus was given multiple hurdles to overcome his journey back faithful to his wife without guarantee that his wife would be faithful. after 10 years. Odysseus had self-control of a stone pillar. He did not budge under the pressure of love, temptation, and weakness. He just kept pushing through. Even after Odysseus was set back in his travels, backtracking multiple times, he still fought forward and continued to preserve faithfulness to his wife. To be a true hero like Odysseus, one must have self-control, a never give up attitude, and will pursue something without knowing the outcome. Odysseus cheated death on multiple occasions and was able to use his impeccable wit to outthink the opponents to continue to his return home. What I want to do all my days, I pine for this to go back to my house and see the day of my homecoming. And if some god batters me far out the wine blue water, I will endure it and keep stubborn spirit inside of me. For I already have suffered much and done much hard work on the waves in your fighting. So let this adventure follow. Odysseus' stubborn attitude eventually led him to prevail in his fight for justice and faith, ending in the victory not only for him but his family. Antigone is also the stubborn attitude toward Creon in her fight for justice. She tried time after time to fulfill the way of the gods, to bury her brother. Antigone peacefully fought her way through Creon's plans to thwart the uprising against disrespect for Polynices' brother. I was born to join in love, not in hate. That is my nature. Antigone did not fight how Odysseus or Creon did, or Achilles did, for she fought a different battle, a non-physical battle. She uses her actions and words to show her views of the wrongdoings that Creon has done to her brother, and how family and justice of the gods is more important than pride, the Creon of Thebes. Antigone saw how death and destruction came from her family first, with her father, and then with her siblings, and will end with her and Haman. Death is no different than life. Antigone did not fear death and was willing to die for what she believed. With great dedication and justice. Heroes are not made by honor in battle or saving the princess from evil, but is made by how they act, their personality, and the choices they make. When everything is against them, they never give up or failing to fulfill justice. When met by temptations and lust, heroes must fight and have self-control to overcome evil. Heroes will fight without fear of death. Justice and truth is before death. If a hero dies fighting for what is right, it is known as a life well lived. Heroes are born for greatness and die in greatness, and throughout their lives bring greatness and justice to all around them. Heroes can be anyone, man or woman. With the right motive and the strive for goodness, anyone can be a true hero.
Thank you very much. Give me a moment, we'll get started. Well, thank you very much for helping to define the concept of heroism. It does seem to be one of those terms that we oftentimes don't define very carefully. And when we attempt to, the definition is difficult. And oftentimes we find ourselves having a hard time articulating exactly what are the distinguishing characteristics of a hero. It seems a little bit like beauty, one of those terms that's very essential to life, and yet it's a little difficult to be able to articulate its exact nature. And even though people might say there is no heroes or there is no beauty, if you go to somebody and say, you are not a hero and you are not beautiful, oftentimes that's fairly significant language. And so it seems to be very important concepts to us. And so in trying to define it, I was thinking perhaps making some comparisons would be helpful. And throughout much of your paper, perseverance and doing great things comes to be a pretty big part of your definition of heroism. And I was thinking that's an awful lot like the definition of faith given in Hebrews 11. In Hebrews 11, it talks about people doing pretty amazing things and being able to accomplish great things through faith. And so I thought maybe a good point to start would be perhaps to compare or contrast what heroism is, or what the hero is, to the man of faith.
Well, they're actually quite similar, because of faith, it's all about dedication to know what is good and to follow what is right. It's like, the faith towards God, to follow what you think is true and what is truly right for the will of God. And in heroism, it's a similar thing as you stop at nothing to bring righteousness and truth to those around you, and to thwart others who try to push past the goodness of God, or just the goodness of like the state's laws. So it has a sense of dedication and a never give up attitude to it, just like faith has.
Usually when people talk about heroism, it's pretty hard not to mention good old Frodo Baggins. And Frodo's quest is oftentimes seen as a nice example of somebody who has a quest of heroism that is very weighty and also very solitary, and also kind of the weight of the world on your shoulders. And it seems it's very easy for us all to relate to kind of the heroism and the individual aspect of our lives. I mean, we all have our own lives to live. We all have struggles that are just kind of our own personal struggles. There's not going to be a big crowd of people cheering us on. It's things that we do each day, that we attempt to do what's right, to live and persevere in what's good, and nobody's watching. And a lot of times Frodo is very, very solitary. And also he does have the kind of the world on his shoulders. If he fails, the world's going down. Most of us, if we fail, well, we're going down. And, of course, the people around us will be affected if we don't persevere, but it's not like the sort of thing, kind of gets beyond our immediate scope. How much do you think heroism is related to oftentimes the big scope of things? Often we think of heroes as being figures. Superheroes are always saving the world. Can you say why that sort of big scale of heroism is so oftentimes the object of our concept of heroism, and just whether or not heroism is necessarily attached to doing kind of, you might say, big things?
Yeah, especially in our kind of recent times, it is put up to be this big extravagant heroes. It's a big parade because they stop at nothing to save the princess in the end, kind of thing. And how they have the weight of the world on them, but they also have the as you said, a crowd kind of cheering them on. And as you mentioned, the individualism and how we don't have a crowd cheering us on. It's like Odysseus, how he set out to reunite with his wife, not knowing that she would even be faithful back to him. Yet he still kept pushing. He didn't have a reward coming. So the heroes don't fight for a reward or the cheer of a crowd, because he didn't have anybody rooting for him. Everything was against him. He had all odds against him, and he had no guarantee of a reward at the end. Yet he still pushed forward. So with the individualism, heroism is still very strong. And it's even stronger than getting cheered on by a crowd. The big movie theater action hero.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, Odysseus is a nice example of that, because as you say, if he's doing it for any audience, it's the audience of Penelope, wanting to get back to her, to look at his wife and have his wife look at him and say, "Well done, my good and faithful husband, you're back," and he didn't know if she would even persevere. It's in the hope that she would persevere that he returned, and so that's very admirable. We recently watched the movie Coco. Have you seen this film?
I have not yet.
Yeah, okay. There's a really nice little moment in there, and there's a line that comes up. The evil villain is actually a fellow who is pretty much living to seek fame. He's a musician, and he's done bad things to get his musical fame. And he lives in the light of huge adoration of very big crowds. And the contrast to that is this whole world of your family, if your family remembers you. And kind of the point of the movie is moving towards, the big crowds don't matter, it's your family and the people that are in your life that remember you in just kind of a little family way. But at one point, the villain, he says, "The world is my family," and this great mass of people around him, raise up and cheer him on. And the point of it seems to be a sort of affirmation that, the most important heroism is the heroism to those who are very close to us, not the heroism of the big crowds. And yet there seems to still be something in us that longs for acknowledgement. I don't know if that's universal human trait, but everyone seems to have a desire to be acknowledged by a big group. And that's very oftentimes tied up with our concept of heroism. And so I think my question is why is that such a persistent concept or such a persistent aspect of the way we as humans usually think of heroism?
Because as humans, it's just natural to get that positive reinforcement back. We always want a little goodie in the end after we do something. Even as kids, we're raised to do something. If you do something good in kindergarten, you get a lollipop at the end of the day, kind of thing. And it's all by the admiration of others. And then as we grow up, it's more of like, I need to do good so that my boss sees me as somebody better, or my family, or the people around me. You always want to have that stature of being the best that you could be, but it's not always for the best of good. Because yes, people perceive as famous. Yes, you can do things to get fame in life, but it's not true fame in like the heart of your family or the heart of God. Yes. Mm-hmm. So it's like Antigone and Creon. Creon had he had his pride before him, and he wanted to defy the body of Polynices to show, as he's the new king of Thebes, saying, "Hey, look at me! This traitor betrayed us, and now I'm disrespecting him. Aren't I so cool?" So Antigone says, that's just pride. Family and the rules of the god is actually what matters here, and truth should be brought to that. So it's the different parallels in their story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's in the vision that you're giving is kind of a vision, a heroism that takes imagination. I mean, the Olympic gold medal, the huge stadium filled with roarous fans, that seems like a sort of heroism that can be pretty easy to see. And yet the heroism that may be the most authentic could be something that takes some imagination. You have to see something or to feel something that may not be particularly obvious to you. And it doesn't relate a whole lot to your question, but there's a little joke that I always thought was very illuminating. It's two boys that are sitting talking at a table, and a very attractive young lady walks by. And one looks over the other, and they both comment on the just perfection of her physical beauty. And then one says to the other, "Leave her for boys without imagination." And you think, okay, maybe there are some boys that cannot see anything but the beauty that is just evident in a picture. They can't see, they just can't see it. And but there is a beauty that it's sometimes a little harder to see, not so instantaneous, but one that is still very important. And perhaps the same with heroism. There is a sort of heroism that takes imagination. And I guess, how would you think that we can cultivate that imaginative heroism? Not the sort of heroism of the immediate perception, but that heroism that does take into account perhaps the more unseen aspect of heroism.
So we a lot of times we look and strive for the big kind of cinema heroism of the big crowd, and the way that the imaginative heroism is found is in that greatness must be fulfilled at any cost, meaning death. So like you're thinking of a hero, at the end they get the big parade and everybody's cheering on them, but a true hero could just, die fighting for what's good, and that's the case for a lot of, soldiers from America. They're true heroes. They're fighting. They don't get their big parade. They don't get to come back home to their wives and kids. They die fighting for what's right, and then they become true heroes. So you gotta have that imagination. Yes, things can go wrong, and yes, if you just keep pushing forward to fight for the truth of, for family, or the will of God, or just the truth of the state, that it doesn't always end well. But in the end, if you look past the greatness of, somebody, everybody getting cheered on, stuff like that, it's the true justice that is being served in the end.
Thank you. Other questions?
Rachel.
Hey Jordan, that was an awesome paper. So I have two questions. My first question is, who or what determines justice? Because all of your examples were in the context of Greek gods. And this Greek god says you should bury the dead. But in the context of maybe today, or a different moral framework, where is what is just coming from, and how do heroes today fight for that?
The heroes today, though, to determine what they fight for is like, it all depends on the person and what they see. It's all universal to who the person is. A hero makes themselves, and in their actions, they're not made by anything else. So, say I would fight for the truth of God, because that's what I find is true. And yet some people may see that some things are true, and some people don't think it's true. It's all what eventually comes through as like not being prideful or anything. So in like the case of Grayon, he puts his pride before like justice, and he sees through the pride and finds justice in burying her brother.
Okay, so during World War II, Hitler's justification for attacking Poland was that it was just because they'd violated trade agreements, they threatened him, so now he's going to respond to that threat and attack them. And so through that lens, he's saying, well, this action's just, and I'm acting under justice. But is he really being a hero?
Heroes, anybody who is acting in justice doesn't mean it's a hero, because people all around the world are acting in justice or doing something that is just to them, or whatever they say, but it doesn't mean they're a hero. It's, as I said in my paper, it's not just one small thing that defines a hero. It's this wide scope of, the different traits that truly make somebody a hero. So somebody just acting, oh, this is justful, that doesn't make them a true hero. That just makes them fighting for what they believe.
Okay. My second, third question. In today, given that there's just very few who maybe are heroes willing to stand up because they're people of integrity, they're virtuous, would you say that almost heroism is dead?
In a way, it's very minimal and it's dying. A lot of the heroes we see today are that kind of broad. They did something good, so let's praise them. There's very few people who actually stand up for what's right. And yes, they get beaten down for it and criticized for what they're fighting for. But they're truly heroes, and they come into the strangest of people. They can be just from different ages, genders, and such. And it doesn't mean you have to fight in the battle of like the military to be a hero. You can just stand up and talk and speak about what you think is true, and to fight verbally and mentally for the goodness of man, and you'll be considered a hero. But yes, in a way, a lot of today's heroes there's not too many seen.
Thank you.
Well, yes.
So, very good people, by the way. Just as we say, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, heroism is in the eye of those who are being rescued, no matter what scale. So, I'm thinking, okay, mom and toddler's in the grocery store, it's pouring rain, she drops her keys not realizing it and is headed to the car, and someone sees the keys, runs out in the pouring rain, and rescues the mom with the keys as she's just realizing she doesn't have the keys to that mom. That could, even though it wasn't this grandiose, heroic act, but to her, that person kind of saved the day. So how would you relate that? I mean, you're just talking about, you know, we don't have a lot of modern day heroes or any real heroic, and what Rachel was saying. So how would you relate the heroism is in the eye of a beholder of, or those that's being rescued with your three characters that you compared and contrast?
Yes, definitely, good point. And as I was talking about my paper, how I chose 3 different people that have completely different stories. Some, like Antigone's fight, might not be as great as Achilles, or the great journey home of Odysseus. She just did some simple thing. She fought for her brother when everybody else didn't care at all of what she was doing. Nobody praised her for it.
So who would you say Antigone was, who was she heroic for? Who was
For the will of God and her family. So she's true to her family.
and so hers was more on a public scale, whereas Odysseus was more on a,
Yeah, he fought for the love of his wife, even though he may not know that she would love him back. He still fought without the benefit of reward. Just like the person coming out to give the keys to the mom, he's not being a hero because he gets an award. She's not gonna, give him a parade or hand him a $5 bill. She's just gonna say thank you and unlock her car.
but
So,
yet she felt rescued
yes,
to a point. I mean, I've been in that situation, so I know. Very good.
yes, ma'am.
So you are mentioning Achilles as a hero, and my question is he a hero being that he was so cowardice and just borderline kind of immature, being that Briseis was taken away from him, and then he just kind of threw his hands up in the air and was like, well, I don't really want to fight anymore. How does that come into play with him being a hero?
Well, interesting. That is really interesting. Doesn't come into play with him being a hero. I guess being a coward, yes, it's not a very heroic trait. But yeah, I don't think that comes to affecting his heroism. Yeah, it's not very good for his stature. But the good deeds that he did were heroic in finding justice in his rage. So yeah.
Things kind of bouncing off of that. And so I guess I'm wondering, is it basically kind of ridiculous or impossible for us to say that anyone's a hero, since, aside from like works of fiction where you can kind of see into their mind, but since we don't have that ability, is it like impossible for us to say that that person is a hero, like definitively? Because we don't know why they did it. Maybe they were doing it for the thing, So should we only say, oh, that person did a heroic act, instead of saying that person is a hero?
Yeah, that definitely. Somebody could, as like I was talking about, like Achilles. Yeah, he did a lot of heroic acts. Yes, he could be considered a hero. But somebody could not have the right mindset, but could have a burst of heroism or have a heroic act. So yeah, you could classify people not as heroes, but have a truly heroic act, like since we cannot see into their minds like we can in movies or books and stuff. So yeah, I do agree that would classify.
Very good.
Yes.
I'd like you to talk just more specifically about what is the aspect of heroism that you see in Odysseus, and how your understanding of what heroism is shown in the examples of his life.
So he wouldn't give up to fulfill the goodness to come back to his wife and be faithful to her without the guarantee of a reward. A lot of heroes, fight for fame and a reward and a big Odysseus, he didn't push forward knowing he could have come back home and his wife was sleeping with another man, and he would have done that whole journey for nothing, but he still fought. So he was selfless in the act of, he's not expecting anything in the end, yet he still fought for what is good to bring faithfulness back to his wife, and he let nothing stop him, even after setback after setback of different courses being set off. He still went forward without the. He didn't bring justice just for the reward in the end. He brought it for the goodness of his family and his wife.
And when you say that's the same thing that we see in Antigone, or is her type of heroism a different thing?
It's in both ways. Yes, she fought and nothing. There was no reward really for burying her brother. It was just the gratification, the satisfaction that she would fulfill the rules of the god and bring justice back to her family. She wasn't going to get a parade or a big celebration that she buried her brother. It was just, she gets to mourn over him, and there was no real. It was a very selfless act. So she put herself, and she even died for it as well. So she was even gonna put her life on the line for that.
Yeah, she certainly does put her life on the line. She knows the law is set against her. She seems pretty shocked, though, when she actually does face the death penalty. And when she speaks of her actions, she says, there's nothing that I fear more than death without glory. And she speaks of it as being a glory to oppose Creon. And do you think that any interest that she has in glory mitigates or diminishes the actual heroism of her act?
It's actually like a different type of glory. It's against his pride. It's not like, the glory you gain in battle like most people want, the big praise by people. It's the glory to glorify God and to glorify the will of them and their family. It's not like she's going to be praised. No, everybody was against her. She was going to get no glory from the people of Thebes. She all had backlash. So the glory was a different type of glory. It was like of glorifying Zeus.
Well, what would you say is the relationship of glory to the pursuit of heroism? Is glory, does glory itself really kind of poison heroism, or is there an appropriate place for glory in the pursuit of heroism?
It's all in the motive. If you are only pursuing heroism because you want the glory and you want the big parade, that's not true heroism. You're just doing some heroic acts and getting some praise from that. It's if you strive to bring justice and to bring truth without the fact that, I'm doing this because I'm going to get praised and I'm going to get cheered on. That's the true heroism.
I'm sorry, can you say the last thing again? I didn't quite hear what you
I
said.
was saying the will, the fact that you push forward and to fortify and fulfill justice and truth without the want for glory, then that is true heroism. Without, and yes, glory can actually poison heroism in the fact that if you're only fighting because you want glory, then you're just a glorified warrior. You don't have actual heroism.
So glory oftentimes does, glory often is associated with heroism, but it's, I guess, a dangerous associate.
Definitely.
Okay, all right, thank you. Other questions? We don't really have a concept of heroism in the scriptures. It seems to be another one of those things like geometry that primarily an inheritance from the Greeks. And do you have an explanation for why heroism seems to be a concept that doesn't really have a equivalent in the scriptures?
Well, it's because heroism isn't such a large, praisable thing. Yes, it's praisable, but what I'm trying to say is like, it's not in the scriptures because it's not something that is, should be, in a sense, glorified because they're doing good because they have, so they deserve that glory. It's people are doing good because it should be done. And it's almost given. So heroism, in a way, isn't important. It isn't fancy because good should be done, and heroes should be everyday people that you find everywhere because goodness is the way of the world and how things will eventually end up in the goodness of heaven. So I guess, in the way that heroism is actually found all throughout the Bible in different people doing small acts, you know, Good Samaritan, stuff like that. Some small deeds here and there. Yes, there's heroism in heroic acts, but truth is should always be first.
Mhm. Yeah, when the Greeks thought of heroes, those of Homer would probably first come to mind. Achilles, Ajax, Odysseus, Hector. And there's a very interesting little a marble image at the J. Paul Getty Museum, and it's of people in pilgrim's attire, their big wide hats, coming to worship at the altar of Achilles. And there was actually a cult of Achilles, people who would worship Achilles as a god. And I guess the respect or reverence given to heroes by the Greeks almost seems to be a sort of worship. And is that esteem that we put heroes into almost, you might say, dangerous or a threat to the glory that we give to God? When we say, to him alone be the glory, does that mean that for us there is only one hero, and that is Jesus?
Yeah, definitely. If people should be praised and rewarded for, you know, the heroism and the good that they've done, but not if it is after or before you glorify that God. Yes, he's the ultimate hero, and he makes and builds these heroes with his own hands, crafting people and these other, say, miniature heroes that you find all over the world are, yes, they're heroes, but the one true hero is God. And the way that people can be heroic is they're fighting for God, and he is the king, and they're his knights fighting for his kingdom.
Thank you. Other questions?
Yes.
I had a question about it made me think of Don Quixote and whether he would be a hero, because most of his actions weren't all that heroic, but he sure did think he was a hero. He thought he was pretty great. So what is the intent? Like, how does the intent of your actions play into what he actually did?
Yeah, definitely. You as people can see themselves, yes, what I think is just and right, so that means I'm a hero, but that's not always the case. So it's always seen by a greater outside force as, fighting for God, or fighting for family, fighting for, the love of your wife, rather than kind of just the blind kind of fogginess of kind of Don Quixote fighting for what he thinks is right. Yeah, definitely you have a big part in your heroism, but also for what you fight for. Definitely kind of shows how heroic you are, or if you even are just blindly fighting for nothingness. Yes.
You're talking about the different rewards of heroes. So some get the parade and the accolades, and some just quietly do the right thing. So what would be the difference between a hero who does the right thing and a true servant?
True servant, well, they're practically the same. True servant of God, they don't expect anything out of it. They're doing whatever it takes to glorify what they have to do to bring truth to those around you, to glorify God. And it's in the same way of a true hero. Yes, you don't expect an outcome or a parade. You just do what you have to do what's right to glorify God. So yeah, that would be a very good summation.
So like what she was saying, and kind of what I was saying, it's not that they were intending to be a hero, it's just to that person that was a heroic act, even though it was like, so what? It was this little thing, but to that one person, at least in their mind, they may not vocalize it. So is that what you're kind of saying?
Yeah.
Other questions? Thanks very much, Mr. Cook. We will take a short moment to pause, and then we'll come back to Mr. Martin's paper. Hey, you made it.